Good morning. Good morning. We would like to welcome you to the endorsement interview with Veterans in Politics International. With us today, we have MACK Miller, who is running for State Assembly District 5. Mr. Miller, good morning, and how are you doing?
Good morning. Fantastic.
First off, we'd like to just start off by thanking you very much for coming in this Monday morning and spending some time with us and being willing to answer our questions. First thing I would like to do is start off by giving you roughly 10 or 15 minutes to give just a brief background about yourself, where you're from, a little bit about yourself, and then also included in that, would you please give us the boundaries for State Assembly District 5, and also what exactly is it that it does a State Assembly District 5 person do?
Okay, great. Well, I'm Mack Miller. I'm running for Assembly in Nevada State Assembly District 5. The boundaries of Assembly District 5, the westernmost point is Grand Canyon, approaching Summerlin. Since that may not be a very known street, I would say that Sahara would be, one of the most western points. The easternmost point would be Rainbow. The northernmost point would be Alta, which is by South Point and Tivoli Village. And the southernmost point would be Flamingo. So it would generally encompass that area. The lakes, Kenya Gate Country Club, Desert Breeze, Community Center, and the sorts. All state representatives in the Assembly are part of our legislature, and basically, in a nutshell, they introduce the bills that ultimately may or may not become law. So every Nevada revised statute in this state was originally a bill that was voted into law after coming out of committee and then signed by our governor if it passes through our legislature. So your Assembly representatives are those that, in a nutshell, create every law in the state of Nevada. Okay? I was born and raised in Nevada. I was born and raised right here in Las Vegas. I originally grew up in Assembly District 6, which is traditionally known as the West Side. Not geographically the West Side, but we call it the West Side, where the lettered streets, D and F Street and all that sort of thing. I grew up off of Helen and Highland. And for those of you that don't know what Highland is, it's now Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard. So that's where I grew up, spent all of my formative years there. Kermit Booker, that was my neighborhood. I've since lived in just about every district in the city as it's grown, because I've seen the city grow, tremendously. There was a point where Decatur was pretty much the farthest point you'd be going out this direction, unless you were going to Tula Springs or out of town or the little restaurant that's up the street here. I went to Valley High School. I went to Community College of Southern Nevada. Both of the two campuses at the time was Henderson and Cheyenne. I studied business administration as well as political science, and then pre-law, and later went on to law school. Now, I moved to Los Angeles for a number of years for law school, worked there, opened businesses there. I've opened businesses in Las Vegas. Some of the businesses were successful, some of the businesses were not successful. I currently run a rather successful, up and down, I should say, because times are hard, consulting firm right now in Summerlin, just adjacent to my district in Tivoli Village, and actually down the street with a second location. Consulting with a number of attorneys and other strategists is what I do. So I help businesses and individuals in whatever they need. I'm known as the guy that builds teams to accomplish a goal that you wish to accomplish, whether it be professional or personal. Back in the 90s, I've been involved in this community all of my life. In the 90s, while I was in high school, I went to Valley High School, I started a program called Trial by Peers. Very proud of it, and I mention it every chance I get because I'm so proud of it, and I'll tell you why. Trial by Peers is a program that works with the Clark County Bar Association, with Metro, and with our judiciary, and it's a diversion program. When I grew up in that area where I grew up, the West Side, there wasn't much respect for law enforcement. There wasn't much respect for anybody in uniform or anybody of authority, and frankly, there wasn't much respect for anybody that was white because we didn't understand them. We didn't associate, and there was a time when we couldn't cross over the freeway. Okay, it's kind of the reasons why we have sheriff's cards, and people don't know that. It was you had to get a sheriff's card, not to work, but a sheriff card was so that you could prove a reason and have a reason, legal reason, to cross over a certain street. Okay, that's how the sheriff's cards originated. But back then, I started that program because I saw a lot of young kids, teenagers, my friends, constantly get in trouble, and the biggest excuse was always peer pressure. So hence the term trial by peers. My thought process, even as a teenager, was if peer pressure could get you into trouble, the same peer pressure could either keep you from getting in trouble or get you out of that trouble, prevent you from getting back in it. And that started Trial by Peers. Trial by Peers teaches kids about the law, teaches them about the judiciary system. It shows them both sides of it, from being a jurist to being a judge to being an attorney to being the defendant even, and the prosecutor. Once they understood all that and how it worked, they saw it from a different perspective. It reduced the criminal rate in the juvenile justice system by 70%. And it's been going strong ever since 1993. Fast forward, I've always been politically active and behind the scenes working in this community. I sit on numerous boards, civil rights boards, Chinese American Citizens Alliance, helping other organizations, special needs organizations and special needs boards that I've sat on. Anything that, and a lot of it was dealing with children and the youth, because I was a child at the time, and so I've grown into that. As I gotten older, having businesses of my own, there was one particular time where I lost my job, and I was going to college. I was going to UNLV, and I remember I couldn't get unemployment at the time, and this is a topic that we need to talk about now because we're seeing the highest unemployment rates because of this COVID virus thing that's going on. But I couldn't get unemployment, and the reason I couldn't get it was because they said, well, listen, you're a part-time student. If you're not available for full-time employment, we can't give you your unemployment. Keep in mind, unemployment is an insurance. It's not a social service. You pay into that, the employer pays into that, and each worker pays into that. So it's not something coming out of social services. However, I couldn't understand why I couldn't take advantage of that opportunity, the unemployment insurance, and keep going to school. I realized that something needed to change. In my neighborhood, they were going to choose the $200 versus school. They're going to say, I'm going to take this $200 and I'm going to quit school, and then when I exhausted $200, I'll go back to school. But that usually doesn't happen. And I didn't take advantage of it. But I vowed something's got to change. We need to have incentives for people to get educated, incentives for people to start their own business and to work, and not have things that enable them or decentivizes them from doing something positive for the community. I'm running for Assembly District 5 for that very reason. I get calls from my district. I get calls from other districts, from communities, from people all over the city asking for my help. I run my own business. I get calls for people asking me to be at school board meetings, PTA meetings, SOT meetings, okay, judiciary hearings for our legislature, city council meetings, 8 o'clock in the morning, 9 o'clock in the morning. I'm there. If you go to my website, mackmillerfornevada.com, there's an issues page. On that issues page, you'll not only see what I'm about, what I support, what my community supports, and what they're against. You'll see my positions on them, whether I oppose or whether I support them. But what's more, you will see actual video of me fighting in support or against those proposed bills or any kind of regulation. And you'll see those videos that were taken down from our state's web pages, from our legislative sites. Now, no other candidate does that, and I do that because I put my money where my mouth is. I don't get paid to do this, and I've never gotten paid to do this. And by the way, by comparison, once elected, that's really not pay. That's a stipend to travel up to Carson City and do a job. I am not that representative that you will only see 3 months out of every 2 years. Because I run my own business, I have the time to get to those meetings you need me at. My opponents will say, well, that's a county issue. That's a city issue. That's a commission issue. But when a representative or any person in this community says to me, Mack Miller, we really want you to go down to that commission meeting and talk about this or oppose that, you won't get a response from me saying, well, we can leave that up to city council. Leave that up to the county commission. No, Mack Miller is there. Mack Miller will be there, and I have the time to be there. My opponent does not. Where is our representation. This is the reason why I'm running.
Okay, thank you very much. With that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to my colleague to the left.
How you doing, Mr. Miller?
I'm doing fantastic.
All right. So some of the things we've learned about you is that you're very pro Second Amendment.
Yes, I am.
Which a lot of us do appreciate. So would you be willing to help people with the Second Amendment and, I would say, pass some type of law that would hold businesses who create an unsafe environment by telling people who have licenses and have gone through state schools and other things through Metro and background checks and are licensed to carry, would you work on something that would make those businesses responsible for if a shooting occurred there and a proper person's trained was not able to respond to an active shooter because they're not allowed to bring a firearm on those premises?
Wow, I'm glad you. Here's the thing. I've heard a lot of laws that said, well, you know, you've got to bring your. Oh, the one about the school. I think it was the one where they say teachers or whoever is licensed to carry. By the way, you don't have to be licensed in Nevada to carry. This is an open carry state. We did away with the blue cards years ago. And they said, well, keep your weapon in the car. Well, I don't know what good your weapon in the car does if you have an active shooter in the business or on the campus. Because you're not going to be running out to your car. This isn't a movie. You're not running out to the car. You know, this isn't California where you have to keep the weapons. So I 100% support legislation that would do just that. Because the very same business, if someone were to get hurt in a business, I challenge you, and I guarantee you that we have lawyers suing businesses for failure to provide adequate security. So if the business can be held liable for failing to provide adequate security, then you're tying a business's hands by saying that they cannot have a law-abiding citizen carry on the premises. Now, current law allows for business owners to keep their weapons in their businesses. We know that. That doesn't necessarily extend to the employees. I would be more than happy to sponsor legislation that let that extend to the employees so that those employees could rightfully not only defend themselves in the case of a situation where, because I would rather, hey, look, if a guy came in there and he's going to do something bad with a gun, I appreciate a law-abiding citizen who has a firearm on their hip, and if they have a concealed, I appreciate them opening fire. I just also appreciate their accuracy in doing so.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mack. So my question has to do with the same. Now, with the same thing, it's going to be around the Second Amendment. How do you feel about teachers having weapons and being able to protect the children in a mass shooting here in Nevada?
Okay. So I've got a daughter, a 10-year-old, in a public school, in the Clark County School District. I have again, extending from businesses to schools, I have absolutely no problem with our teachers carrying. I do want them to be trained because now you're not, with a school situation, you've got a crowded area. You've got a number of people. Okay, you have to have a little more extensive training on how to utilize and discharge your firearm when you have a crowd of people around. This is in the Wild West. I do want them to be trained. I have absolutely 100% zero problem with teachers in the public school system being armed. I would go as far as to say that, number one, because the Clark County School District Police Department is short-staffed, I would go as far as to say that that could be one of the requirements for at least a set number of teachers at every public school. Since we only have enough Clark County School District police officers, they only patrol the high schools for the most part. They only come to the elementary schools when the principals call. Okay? And growing up in Las Vegas, I know, yes, those high schools can be a handful. But if we had a requirement even that a set number of teachers, undisclosed teachers, obviously, actually were required to carry and trained to do so, I'm all for it. My daughter's in a public school. I personally have a barrier for my daughter in case, and she's been trained. She's 10. I've trained her on what to do in case of an active shooter. We're talking about training kids about using their own pronouns, whether they can call each other he and she and her and shim and all this kind of X and whatever. But we don't train them on how to protect themselves in case their lives are in danger. It's a no-go for me.
Yeah. Okay, I like that answer. My last question on this would be, so in Arizona, if you're 21 years old and you're legally able to carry a firearm, you're able to do so without a permit. So in Nevada, would you be for a bill, or would you create a bill that would allow citizens, law-abiding citizens that weren't felons, would you create a bill to basically permit them to carry a weapon without a CCW?
Of course, and not only that, I'd also have no problem with it being an 18-year-old, not just a 21-year-old, because if you can join the armed forces at 18, and you can die for this country, and in some cases get screwed over by some leadership. Hate to say it, I mean this is public, but I'm going to say it this way: if you could do that 18, and then in some cases early entry 17, why not? Not just 21, 18 years old. In Nevada, open carry, and I want concealed weapons to be reciprocal. Criminals don't care. Criminals don't give a rat's ass about whether or not. Look, we can pass a law right now that says once you get through your 10-month background check, let's make it a 10-month process, and then once you pass it, you can't pick up your gun for 5 years. Let's say we did that. Now, that's absurd. But even if we did that, do you think the criminals are going to say, well, gosh, darn it. I was going to do a drive-by, but I got to wait 5 years and 10 months. And I don't know any criminal. And tell me this. How many criminals and how many ballistics checks have come back from Metro or any federal agency where whoever committed that crime were a member of the NRA? Zero. How many of them came back and they said, yep, this blood over here or this crip over there, this gun is registered to Big Dog. Big Dog doesn't register his weapon that he's going to clip somebody with. All right? That's those are my opinions and my feelings on it.
Hi, Mr. Miller. Hi. First of all, how are you doing today?
Fantastic.
Listen, 2 weeks ago, starting tomorrow, Governor Sisolak came out with the closing of all non-essential businesses. I have an issue with this because, as you remember, the government gave the Oakland or the Las Vegas Raiders $750 million for
which
this.
I was opposed to.
Yeah, which, that's an amazing gift. It's not being paid back. Second of all, is the construction industry an essential business? Because they're still building the stadium. I drive by there probably once or twice a day. There's about 300 workers at least there. There's 5 food trucks there. And basically the mom and pop operations have been closed down, shut down, and they're being ticketed, if they're open. Also, my second part of that question is that when Governor Sisolak did do the shutdown, he should have had a plan for our small businesses and not rely on the federal government. And also, there's 250,000 casino employees. Some of them are being paid. The Wynn properties are being paid until this trauma, disperses. I know at the Boyd casinos, they're being paid 2 weeks. And other casinos aren't paying some of their employees. So I believe that Governor Sisolak should have had a plan for the employees that got temporarily removed from their positions and
fired. They got fired.
They got fired. Okay, and also my major concern is for mom and pop operations here. Most of these businesses aren't coming back.
First, so yes, I know everyone's saying, well, this is temporary, this is temporary. Whether the governor should have or he did have a plan in place, whether it came out of the blue or not, we're here now. I agree. Our government, our state should have plans in place, and there are certain people whose job it is to plan for these sort of things. Let me mention this. First off, if you go to my website, MacMillerForNevada.com, and you click on the tab that says COVID-19 Update, you'll see my certification with the Homeland Security and FEMA. I'm FEMA certified, okay, for communications and organizing groups in cases like this, okay? Here's the thing. People aren't temporarily removed from their jobs, they're terminated. We know this because you can't be placed on a temporary leave and also apply for unemployment. You have to be terminated in order to apply for unemployment. As far as the small businesses, well, let me go to the first one where you mentioned the construction workers. I kind of laugh at the list of what's considered essential and non-essential businesses. That list is also on my website on the COVID-19 update page, which lists what are essential. Legal services are listed as essential. My dry cleaner is listed as essential. And I'm thinking it's 2020. I mean, first off, no one that doesn't have any disposable income is taking their clothes to the dry cleaner. One. So I don't get it. So I know it's kind of hard to determine what you consider this essential and non-essential. As far as the construction workers go, giving $750 million to a billion-dollar industry to get them to come here, I'm a no-go. Hey, if they want to come here, great. Do it on your own dime. I don't think taxpayers should be putting that money in to get you to come here. We're Vegas. We'll always be Vegas. There's no other community, no other city, and no other state, and no other country that are like us, and they all want to be. People in Monte Carlo come to Vegas, okay, to see a fake Monte Carlo, by the way. But when it comes to is the construction industry an essential? Well, here's the thing. The construction industry has a great union. A union that backed Sisolak. A union that all Republicans and all Democrats alike would love to have back them. Chances of me getting the union to back me are slim to none just because I have an R in front of my name. So I could be killing myself with the unions right now, but I didn't expect their support in the first place. If you're building something that is ordered closed, do I need to say more? You're going to build something that is ordered closed? Even if you finished it, you can't use it. We're all in a situation right now where no one knows what's going to happen in a month. The governor has done a moratorium on evictions. That's all great while we're in the state of emergency. But the Monday after it's lifted, there's going to be so many evictions filed, right? What do you do with that? He's worked with, I guess, utility companies to prevent utilities from being shut off during this state of emergency. That's great, but the bill's still going up, and the minute the state of emergency is over, the best that these utility companies are going to be able to do is what? Give you a payment plan. If you had a $300 electric bill before this started, you have a $500 electric bill now because you're at home all day running electricity. If the governor can use an executive order to close our private businesses, effectively killing us, then he can also use that executive order to not only say, hey, utility companies, no bills are due for those months, period. That's my opinion. Now, you elect me, and I can do more about it.
Absolutely. Two other points. On the Raiders itself, I don't know if you're familiar or aware that the city of Henderson gave the Raiders some property that was worth $1.25 million. It was some land for their practice field. They turned around and sold it for a $6 million profit. And
that's capitalism at its best, isn't it?
Absolutely. Also, with the Raiders giving back, and I can speak from a personal experience.
$1 million?
Pardon me?
The $1 million. I heard the Raiders were giving us a whopping $1 million to help out our community in this crisis. After we gave them $750 million. $1 million.
Plus, they made a profit of $4.5 million off that land that was given it to them. But from a personal experience, when Mr. Sanson, the president of Veterans Politics, asked me to be the chairperson for the Valentine's Day Military Gala Ball, I approached the Raiders through an associate of mine. They provided us, and both Steve and I, we had a good laugh. It was, those dolls, the dog.
Oh, the bobbleheads.
The bobbleheads.
Okay, Raiders bobbleheads.
Yeah, and which was worth, I think the value in most stores are like $19.95. This is for a charity. This is for an association. It's a nonprofit, number one, the veterans, and they're always talking veterans Raiders. So, I have a personal vendetta, with the Raiders because we as all taxpayers provided them with $750 million.
And the stadium.
And the stadium. Thank you very much for your response, sir.
You're welcome.
Okay, Mr. Miller. That's funny. Okay, Mr. Miller, sorry about that. Okay, so to respond to your question, I do understand my colleagues' frustration and yours as well, but do you really think that any politician, whether Democrat or Republican at this time, really knows or understands exactly how to handle this situation? Because it's one of those situations that pretty much caught every politician off guard. Even President Trump was actually thanked by the governor of California, which I thought hell was going to freeze over when I heard
Newsom
that.
thanking the president, right?
Yeah. So in response to your question, do you really think it's fair to criticize the governor for his response based on the fact that it was one of those situations where no one really truly knows how to handle this situation at this time?
When Harry Reid said that Mitt Romney, and I'm no fan of Mitt Romney now, but when Harry Reid said that Mitt Romney hadn't paid taxes, it was unsubstantiated, and then later they asked him, "Hey, Mr. Reid, you said that. Do you want to claw it back? Do you want what's your response to why you said that?" And his only response was, "Well, he didn't win, did he?" So he put that soundbite out there to negatively affect his campaign. All is fair in love, war, and politics. Is it fair to say that the governor isn't doing a good job or not? I didn't say he wasn't doing a good job. Do I believe that any politician, Republican, Democrat, Independent American Party, a liberal or nonpartisan, could be prepared for this or is prepared or can do anything about it? I actually say no. It is something that popped up and that you have to address at the time as best you can. Now, that having been said, not being an elected official, and when I realized that the governor was closing our schools, for example, I realized that was going to happen on Thursday. I realized it was going to take effect on a Monday. And I thought, okay, well, how do I prepare? What can I do myself to help? So I did what I thought would be of some help. I said, well, listen, we've got a car, right? We've got a limo. I said, there's going to be a lot of kids because a lot of kids only eat breakfast and lunch at school. And I thought, there's a lot of kids that won't be able to get to the high schools that are offering the food. So I said, look, we got a car that's not doing anything. Boom, let's get them rides. Let's put one household in the back of a limousine and send them there. Now, I say this, and the reason I say limousine is because someone said, oh, my God, you're flaunting a limousine. Then someone said, oh, my God, you're going to get people infected by putting them in a car together and this and that. One, if they're all in the same family and they're infected anyway, they're infected. I'm not mixing families. Two, we've got a divider between the driver and the main compartment of the vehicle, and we sanitize it. And so I said, if I can get 5 families that don't have cars to meals every day, right, that's that much more I can do in my district and in my neighborhood. So I appreciate every elected official and every citizen doing whatever little bit they can do to help out under these circumstances. Are people going to criticize politicians? Of course. You can't get 50 people in one room to agree on the same thing. Well, I can get them to agree on 2 things. And Congress does it often. And that 2 things I can get every one of them to agree on is to take an early vacation and raise their salary. They raised their salary in this stimulus package for the COVID virus. They added money in there to give them more money. Took an opportunity there to say, hey, well, we're going to give all these billions of dollars to help the community, to help our country, but let's slide in a pay raise too. So, no, it's not fair, but it happens. If you're going to do something, if you can do something, do whatever you can. And try and do it at least according to the CDC guidelines.
Okay, thank you very much for your response. Now I'm going to turn it over to my colleague.
How you doing, Mr. Mack?
I'm doing great.
All right, so basically we're 49th when it comes to school and education, which is completely ridiculous. My daughter tests in the top 99 percentile of the entire nation. She's in first grade.
She's in GATE?
No.
She's not in GATE?
She's not in GATE.
She should be.
They want to double promote her instead of bumping her grades or calling it a promotion like she's being indoctrinated into a job.
Right.
But my question to you is, now that we've seen that these brick and mortar locations, not that many are necessary, you can do a lot of this online with parents more involved, would you be willing to do something about proper school choice and tax dollars going to schools that are more successful, allowing teachers' salaries to be bumped when they prove that they can graduate at a national level more than 70% of their class?
Atlanta, Georgia, I want to say 10 years ago, I think it was about 10 years ago, they actually started doing that in Georgia. Of course, a couple years later, a bunch of teachers went to prison because they were changing grade scores on all the kids. Because they were figuring, well, we're going to get raises if these kids do well, so, they're not doing so well, let's change their grades. To answer your question, yes, I would support that. I sit on the PTA, okay? I sit on the SOT, the school organization team. When our legislation mandated that we have these school organization teams throughout the counties, I was on the first school organization team that existed in this state. I co-chair? I can't even remember. I think I was co-chair and co-vice chair, and I've been on it ever since. So now, under the circumstances where we've determined that we actually can teach kids distance learning, online, that sort of thing, definitely support it. I am for school choice. I had an argument where someone said, a teacher, to be specific, said, I think it's the voucher program that allows a portion of the tax dollars that go to each public school. If I want to pull my daughter out of the public school, and send her to a magnet or a private school, I can take roughly $2,500 away. The teacher said, well, you're going to take all the money away from the schools, and only rich people are going to be able to put their kids in private school. Well, I counter that with saying, if you are rich, you're not waiting for $2,500 to put your kid in a private school when the average private school tuition is $10,000. So that's just a drop in the bucket. Secondly, even if 50% of the parents chose to take advantage of that voucher and take their kid out of the public school and put them in a private school with that little $2,500, $4,500 approximately will stay with the school even though the student is not there. That accomplishes two things. If we're looking at a perfect world, number one, you've got half the class size and more money for the school. Because the majority of the money is still going to stay at the school even though the kid's not there. So that throws that argument out of the water. So I support school choice. I support a parent's right to be able to pull their kid out of a public school system. And even if you don't pull your kid out of the public system, I support, right now, I just printed out about 45 pages for my daughter because the schools are closed. I support, hey, all right, we can put them on the same lesson plan. My daughter can work in my office, work at home, and use the same lesson plan. My daughter, like yours, is also in that percentile. She's in GATE, and she speaks 2 languages fluently. And so, yes, I would absolutely support legislation that will allow a parent to say, listen, even though my daughter or my son is in this public education system, I want to take that lesson plan, teach them that myself. Because what? It's all about the testing. So, all right, they got to pass the test anyway, whether they're sitting in that brick and mortar prison or not. And yes, I called it a prison because that's the way they were designed. They were designed to be bunker shelters and everything else. And that brick and mortar is cheaper than making it fancy. And it's a secure zone for the kids. They built them like that.
So follow up with this real quick is also an educational question and something I've looked into and kind of realized children are more susceptible to learning multiple languages at an early age. And our schools, instead of taking advantage of this, they take English as a second language children and put them in a very single specific class. Would you be opposed to, especially since Nevada is more of a customer service state, we all of our jobs dealing with other cultures, other people, other languages. Instead of having an English as a second language group, why not start all the children learning English, Spanish, and American Sign Language instead of the most used languages in the world? Because every culture has deaf people as well.
Right. So, one, we're so low in education in this state, but it also stems back to us being a transient city. Okay, Las Vegas is very transient. When people are doing, if you ask a majority of people in Las Vegas, you say, hey, where are you from? And they're from somewhere else. 9 out of 10 times they're going to tell you they're from somewhere that has extremely high taxes, right? Because they moved here because they couldn't survive in that community. And then we have a population, a demographic that are on social services that come from other communities. Well, it's hard to get on social services in Nevada. And so a lot of times we see a Bell's curve with people coming in and then leaving. Okay? So that disrupts our education system. And when I say the education system, not so much the system, but the testing scores. Because we have such a high propensity for English as second language learners, right? It's clear that if I were to move to China or Russia and put my daughter, I'm going to say Russia because she speaks Mandarin, so China wouldn't be a problem. But if I move my daughter to Russia and I put her in a school in Russia and there's 100 Russian kids and there's 20 Americans, and the Americans are just tanking in the tests because they don't understand the language, it pulls the whole school's numbers down. People don't understand that, right? So that's what we actually have in Las Vegas. We have that very scenario that happens here, okay? When I grew up, I took Latin at Valley High School. We had Latin. We offered Latin. We don't offer that stuff anymore. We also don't focus on the trade schools. Everybody's not meant to go to college. Everybody doesn't want to go to college. Everybody can't afford to go to college. And by the way, if my air conditioner goes out or my toilet gets stopped up, it's not getting shipped to China, Vietnam, or anywhere else to get fixed. It's going to get fixed by somebody right here in Las Vegas. And when I grew up, whoever came to fix our AC or our toilet usually came from a couple houses down. So if we focus more on the trades, if we put some more money into trade schools, we'd be, even right now when everything's locked down, right? I'm sure the plumbers are having a ball, especially since there's no toilet paper in the stores. But they're not from Vietnam. We're not shipping our toilets. So I support those languages being taught in our schools, being mandatory, and not just saying English second language. We got to cater to people that don't speak English or whatever. No other country caters to us that don't speak their language, by the way. I'm all for, you know what I mean? You can go up to Canada. There was a movie about it. You can say, fuck you in Canada. The police officer will pull you over and say, hey, you got to say it in French also. So I'm not against, number one, making English our language nationally. I do support requiring that, yes. I support requiring those classes at an earlier age. You can learn it. I am not going to be learning Mandarin now. I learned a few words. I can understand a little bit. But my little girls, fluent. And I'm going to be teaching them Spanish next. And I'm glad you mentioned sign language because I actually hadn't thought of that. And that's something that I think I would like to put them into because right now they'll pick it up, they'll absorb it. So, yes, I would support that.
Okay, Mr. Miller, my next question is, do you think it was a fair trade by this current administration to trade the wall for DACA, the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals?
No. First off, if I get an offer, we get them all the time, limited time offer, right? You get all these advertisements, something costs $50, but for now it's 50% off, but you got to take advantage of it by a certain date, right? Everyone knew when DACA was enacted that it was a limited time offer. Everybody that applied for it, they were told the guidelines. They were told what they had to do every 2 years. And there was never a guarantee that would exist forever. So one, our president making it his decision to want to cancel it, his prerogative, and I have no problem with that. But to trade off one thing for another, It happens in politics. It happens in legislation. Depending on when things are happening, and we say, what do we need? What do we need right now more? Right? All right, let me go ahead and extend. Because here's the thing. At any given time, the president can still say no to DACA, even though he just temporarily extended it. So he got what he wanted. That's permanent. Okay? If I put up a wall, that wall's, well, it's permanent as it can be, right? But if I get the money for a wall, we get the Army Corps of Engineers to put it up because it could be under their purview. They're to protect the nation. But I just temporarily stayed some DACA. Again, the key here is temporary. It's strategy. I'm glad we have an administration that does not play their hand prior to making decisions, right? They don't say, hey, we're considering this, and then and let people know what they're considering doing. I like how they get things done and they use the red herring. I like that. Sometimes you got to get people looking over here like a magician while you do the real work over here. I think that's what our administration has been doing. This is why if you look at the current administration's list of accomplishments, man, talk about a politician making promises. You know, usually politicians do promise the kitchen sink and everything else when they're running for office, but can't accomplish it. Look, when I was in high school, I ran for class senate and all this kind of deal, and we'd make promises like, oh, I promise that we won't have to eat the cafeteria food, and we had no control over whether we could do that or not, right? And I think that we've got an administration that realized the promises he was making, he actually could do something about it rather than making wild promises. And I think he works hard at getting things accomplished. I don't like the fact that he compromised on that, but it's what it is. You do have to compromise sometimes. I think more people need to understand that this is a temporary compromise to get something that's more long term. I hope that answered the question anyway. I flat out say no, but then I go back and I explain that.
Also, I just wanted to make a clarification for the GATE program. They start testing in grade 2, and they place them into grade 3, 4, and 5.
Yes,
so,
gifted and talented education.
Yes,
my daughter.
So I just want to for that clarification. Yeah, a couple years ago, Mr. Miller, there was an incident with a family court judge that was racially charged against African American litigants. It was in the newspaper, in the Review Journal twice, and also on the various talk shows, the Breakdown with Lady AK, and myself, I was asked to facilitate the litigants' needs. The standard procedure rule of the law, taking it up to the Judicial Discipline Committee, they came back with a response indicating that, yes, there was a racial statement made, but not sufficient enough. One statement should be enough. I then approached a number of NAACP, and I was extremely disappointed with them because they wanted $100 from each one of the 100 litigants that had approached me. $100, and a lot of the litigants didn't have that extra $100. We also approached a number of other African American groups here in the city, and they didn't want to get involved. It finally went down to I made arrangements for a number of African American litigants to visit with the FBI. This, to me, there was a situation. The judge was Sandra Pomerantz, and we have videotape, the court video, and the minutes of the hearing. She actually ordered an African American litigant, the grandmother and the child, ordered that child to those three of them to get their hair redone, the nappiness taken off. It was in the paper, June 2017, and also July of 2017. Nobody wanted to get involved. If you were elected, what would you have done?
Wow. Okay, I'm not aware of that particular.
Mr. Miller, in the interest of time, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to go ahead and limit your response to 5 minutes, please.
No problem.
Thanks.
I wasn't aware of that incident, that case. I didn't hear about it, which is interesting. That sounds like something that would have been blown up in the media, but apparently it wasn't as blown.
It was in the Review Journal.
Just the Review Journal?
Just the Review Journal and various talk shows.
Okay. I must have been under a rock at the moment or working really hard. But in any case, as a legislator, here's the thing. I don't have any authority to discipline a judge.
Of course, yes.
However, I can lend my title and my position as a representative of the people to shine a bigger light on that problem. And that's exactly the kind of thing I do now. So when someone in my community calls me and says, Mac, we want you to come out and protest with us against this or for this, that's where I am. So had I been involved or informed of it, the extent of my involvement would have been, I'd have been right next to him. If my name would have, like Jesse Jackson, I'm not going to put myself, I'm not going to say I'm a Jesse Jackson, I'm not going to say I'm a, any of these guys. But having an elected position where you are a representative of the people, again, I can't order anything on a judge and I can't discipline a judge. But I can definitely put on my state letterhead, my legislative letterhead, and send a number of letters out and get on the phone and bug the hell out of the right people to do the right thing. I am not afraid of a fight. I'm not afraid. I think Pomerantz, either she was or her husband was a Supreme Court justice in this state too, right? I'm not sure, but that name sounds familiar. So. And I also believe, I do recall that name from years ago, because like I said, I was born and raised in Vegas.
Right.
But one of the things that I do is I get under the skin of people. And I pick a side. I don't straddle a fence. In a situation like that, I would have probably been wearing a bulletproof vest and had bodyguards because I would have pissed some people off. I would have gotten their face and I'd have gotten under their skin. That's what I would have been able to do. And I'd do it right now. Had it happened now, not as an elected official. You'd see me out on the side of the street with a sign, waving a banner, doing whatever it takes to draw more attention to it.
Okay. And just one quick statement, please. If and when you do get elected, she's on the bench till December of 2020. She's retiring. And she's still sitting in court, destroying thousands and thousands of families, Las Vegas families.
Ask for a review. You can have cases reviewed, judges' cases reviewed.
Yeah, it's a closed system.
We know that, but
so are you
the more noise that's put on it, things happen to open up.
So if you get elected, so you're making a commitment as of today that you would do something about this?
With your help?
Yeah.
With your help?
Oh, absolutely.
Then I'm making that commitment right now.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Miller. My question to you is, what exactly does a state assemblyman for District Number 5 do?
I think that was the very first question I answered for you. However, all the assembly representatives propose bills, amendments, in a nutshell, create the laws in the state of Nevada. You can propose them, amend them, make motions to redact, edit, you name it. You pull up the Nevada Revised Statute. If there's a law there, NRS, whatever, if you want it changed, amended, you sponsor a bill to do so.
Right. I know I kind of repeated the question, but one of the reasons why I asked the question that I did was, if somebody asks you exactly what a state assemblyman does, can you define what that role is? Because lots of times what ends up happening is that somebody will ask a question, what is a state assemblyman? Most people don't know. So can you explain exactly what a state assemblyman is? Like what specifically is the role? Because a lot of people don't understand what an assemblyman is.
Now I understand. So any legislator is a representative of the people. So rather than have the 64,000 people in Assembly District 5, or for that matter, averaging out in every Assembly District, rather than have all 64,000 be required to go to Carson City or to go to a meeting to enact a law or support that law, you're electing someone to represent you. So it'd be no different than if you needed to go to court, but you couldn't make it, you'd hire an attorney to go in your stead to put forth your wishes. So an assemblyman or woman is that person that you're putting in charge of representing your wishes at the state level, your wishes at the state level. So when I look at my opponent's record and I see that a majority of the bills she voted in support of or against, a majority of the constituents in Assembly District 5 weren't on the same page with her. When she put forth a bill to make our state a popular vote state, meaning our votes would go to whoever wins the popular vote and not use the Electoral College, when she put that bill forth, and you'll see this on my website, MackMillerForNevada.com, on the issues tab. You'll see me arguing against her on that. When she put that bill forth, it turned out that there were 70+% more people against that bill than for it. When you find this out before presenting a bill, why present the bill if a majority of your constituents are against it? It's because she's from Detroit. And in Michigan, they're a popular vote state.
Okay, with the interest of time, can you please just look into the camera and explain to the voters exactly why they should vote for you?
Well, first off, I'm Mack Miller. All of my issues and what I'm about is on MackMillerForNevada.com. That's M-A-C-K, Miller, the number 4, Nevada.com. I am working, not just running, but I'm working to represent Assembly District 5 and this state in Carson City because I have the time to represent you, the time to be where you need me to be when you can't be there, and to put forth your interests ahead of my own in Carson City. Not just 3 months out of 2 years, but every single day of a 2-year term. If you need a representative somewhere to put forth your regard, Mack Miller, I am that person. I've done it, I've been doing it, and I don't get paid to do it. I do it because it's the right thing to do. I love Nevada. This is my home. Mack Miller for Nevada.
Okay, thank you very much. We want to thank you for coming in this morning and taking the time to answer the questions that we had. With that being said, we want to thank you, and you have a good afternoon or good morning, and that will conclude our interview for State Assembly District Number 5. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen, for having me.